Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the second ever episode of Wisconsin Latino News Opinion Plus. Opinion Plus is a monthly series airing on Fridays. It's a space for our opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Latino community is curious about. My name is Annabelle Rocha, editor and reporter of Wisconsin Latino News. Puente means bridge in Spanish, and that's what the organization we're talking to today does. Bridges the gap between rural farmers and Mexican immigrants who leave their homeland to work alongside them. Today we're joined by Director Roberto Tecpile, President Mercedes Falk, and co-founder John Rosenow from Puentes Bridges. Thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start by talking about the work Puentes does in Wisconsin and the need for an organization like this.
Most definitely. So our organization was founded about 20 years ago when farmers first took a trip to Mexico. It originally started as just a language experience because they really wanted to be able to communicate more clearly with their employees. And they went to a language school in Cuernavaca. And John here kind of thought, well, if we're going to Mexico, why don't we take some time to go visit the families of our employees? And the woman who organized the trip at the time, a Spanish teacher from Elma, Wisconsin, right here, Sean Duvall, she was like, oh my gosh, duh, why didn't I think of that? And that was a super transformational part of the trip for all of the farmers involved and the families. They were so honored that the employers of their son or brother or husband was taking the time to go and meet them. It just meant so much. And so when John got home, he put his head together with Sean and was like, we have to do everything to make sure that this just isn't a one-time trip. So they incorporated Puentes 2 years later and started taking yearly trips and working with farmers in Wisconsin and Minnesota to really help bridge that cultural gap as well as the language gap. Because even though there is a separate language, there's so much that they have found in common in ways that they realize that they really connect with one another on a deeper level. But there was also cultural differences. And so Puentes was formed organically in that way to help them see that they have so much more in common and to move past some of those cultural differences and understand where each other were coming from. And so the effort that the farmers made to go to Mexico was just a really good starting point.
So generally, what is communication like between farmers who don't speak Spanish and people new to the country who don't speak English?
There are a lot of hand gestures involved and a lot of using phones to help people communicate. And then they reach out to interpreters like myself. Mm-hmm. And also there are many people, farmers have taken the time to learn some Spanish, as well as employees have taken the time to learn some English. So they use the little words that they know. And just the desire to want to understand each other really helps a lot. And sometimes I have been witness to these beautiful conversations where there's only a few words in each language that are spoken. And I don't understand what's going on, but the farmer and the employee understand each other 100%. And I just think that's a beautiful thing because it's all about that desire to want to know where the other person is coming from.
John, as someone who participated in the very first trip, can you describe what that experience was like for you?
We traveled down to Mexico. I thought it was kind of a dumb idea to go to Mexico to learn the language. I mean, I went and just learned it in a classroom. And but after the experience, we were in a town called Orizaba, and which is on the base of the mountains, the Sierra Madre Mountains, where most of our employees come from, where Roberto came from. And so we were staying in a hotel, the Sierra Madre Hotel, I believe, or something like that. And my employee at that time was Roberto Montalvo. This is Roberto Tecpile. And Roberto Montalvo's family came down from the mountains dressed in their finest. They had their little daughter, Lydia, who was maybe a year old, carrying her along. And we met in the dining room of this hotel. And there were TV cameras there. There was radio stations there, all from Mexico, because this was something very unique. One of the journalists that was traveling with us took us aside and said this is the first time he had ever seen employers from the United States come down and visit the families of their employees, which I thought was kind of absurd because why wouldn't you do that? I mean, it's something you really should be doing. But we had a great experience, and we took pictures, and we all in this big picture, and I bought a picture and I sent it home, and this was before the cell phone pictures and stuff like that. But by the time I got home, there was everybody at home knew what I had done and where I had been and who I had talked to, and it had a big impact. And it had a big impact on the people that I was working with. It had a big impact on me, and I just thought, my gosh, this is very, very unique. And it was like a once in a lifetime experience. I got together with Sean Duvall. We exchanged emails every day for like 3-4 years. We met at least once a week, and we dreamed up all kinds of things to do, and plans and ideas and schemes. And we accomplished quite a few of them, and it's still going. And now Mercedes has taken over, and we're at a different new level, which is even better.
Roberto, how did you get involved with Puentes?
I'm gonna talk about what's your question? I can hear you.
How did you get involved with Puentes?
Oh, they buy me because I work up here in Mercedes. We talk sometimes, and so I'm doing great, and I've learned something from those guys.
I also wanted to ask John, as a fifth-generation dairy farmer, how have you seen the industry change in terms of relationships with Mexican workers?
Well, what really has changed is there are Mexican workers. 20 years ago, there wasn't anybody. I hired, 24 years ago, I hired my first Mexican. His name was Manuel in 1998, and he did just a great job. And then he went home, and I hired 2 more. And it continued on from there. And we had an entrepreneur in our area named Carlos, and a number of us farms needed help because there's just nobody to hire locally. Nobody would want to work on a farm anymore. This is back in 1999 or 2000. There was just nobody to work. It's even worse now. And so we started hiring immigrants, and Carlos was working for a neighbor, and he knew where lots of people were working on a tree farm. So he would go over and tell those people there's full-time work here on a dairy farm. It pays well. So people that were on that tree farm were really from the state of Veracruz, mainly Atlazinca and Tepanzacualco and places like that. They started, I guess, coming from that farm over here, and then their brothers and uncles and cousins and stuff heard about it. So they started coming, and now in our area, I think there's 85 farms or 85 dairy farms in the county, and 27 of them have Mexican immigrants working on their farm. And most of them are from the same area where we started from, Atlazinca, where Roberto Tecpile is from, and San Juan Tehuacan, and Tecpile. So we visited those towns. I'll be on my 10th trip there in January, so many times, and I've seen people die. I've seen people get married. I've seen people have children. I've seen the children grow up. I've seen the children come and work for me after they were just little kids. First time I saw them. So it's become really a family type of thing, which is just so typical of dairy farming in Wisconsin. I mean, it's always been a family type thing. And now the families are just from a different country. And it's been a wonderful experience.
So language and culture are important, but I want to talk about working conditions as well. Historically, immigrant laborers can be overworked and underpaid. How have working conditions on Wisconsin farms changed over time, and is there still room for improvement?
Of course, there's always room for improvement. And I just did my year-end stuff, and my highest paid person made $50,000 this year, plus a place to stay, which in Wisconsin is worth about $8,500 a year. So they're making a decent living. They work lots of hours, which is a cultural difference between, let's say, rural and urban in the United States, because I work the same number of hours. And so they are making a living. Of course, there could be better conditions. I'm speaking for my farm. I don't know what all the other farms are. And of course, there could be better understanding. And that's kind of what Puentes is about. If there was a better understanding of the families, the lives and stuff of the people working here, then you have a better chance of providing better working conditions and treating your employees better. And I think that's the real benefit of Puentes to the farmers, and it's a benefit to the employees as well.
We're kind of running out of time. I have so many more questions for you, but really quickly, what other resources would you all like people to know?
I think some of the main resources sounds kind of maybe not like a tangible resource, but we want more and more people to get the chance to meet employees from Mexico that are working on our farms, and just to have that really small connection and realize that they are such wonderful human beings, and they're so much more than a statistic. And we just hope by the work that we do, the stories that we tell on our website, that more and more people can have the opportunity to get to know others from a different country that may work in a different labor force than them, and see how much they have in common. And I know that you mentioned on our website, we do have resources in our community, and there is a Spanish section where people can go to, but we also kind of share our telephone number through word of mouth. So anyone that needs help connecting to resources in our community that are agriculture workers, they can contact us, and we want to help them get healthcare services and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, John, Mercedes. Thank you all for joining us today and teaching us about your work.
Our pleasure.
Join us next time for another episode. For more information about our discussion today, check out our web story on WILatinonews.com and follow us on Twitter at WI Latino News. I'm Annabelle Rocha with Wisconsin Latino News Opinion Plus. See you next time.